So it wasn't long ago then when Champs ended and everyone settled into what they thought would be a nice rest period, a comfy period of time where we could gather our thoughts and assess the situation for the new season. And then everything exploded over the past week. Everything just went absolutely nuts, and no more so than if you were an OpTic fan. And in this video, we're going to talk about FormaL, Envoy, and what lies ahead. First of all, I think on the FormaL situation, I think them dropping FormaL, I get it, right? I do think that he was their underperforming player. He certainly hasn't been the FormaL of old, and we're all going into a World War II game, and I think you've seen through a couple of the OpTic podcasts, he wasn't too keen anyway. So he's already mentioned the idea of just skipping this year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens about whether or not he comes back. But for now, I think that's the right call. But Envoy was a surprise in my opinion. Definitely not one that I saw coming. He's been groomed as the future king. He's the prince to Scump and all that stuff. He's good with the content, builds his brand well. He works very, very hard. And in terms of actual competitive figures, he's positive in hardpoint, positive in the search and destroys, bringing back over 15% first bloods in the search and destroys, and then he's slightly negative in the controls, but overall I think not a bad year individually. I think the one caveat there though is that I don't think he was impactful as he was in 5v5. This root style that he has, this way that he likes to play, when he burst through into the scene on Gen G and last year on Huntsman, I do think that his playstyle definitely benefits amongst that chaos far more than it does in 4v4 when you get caught a little bit more in those positions. It's a bit more brutal on players like Envoy. So then was it all about chemistry? Was it that him and Scump were not working? And this is something that usually I can pull up one of my fancy graphs and my stats and say, yes, there's a clear gap here. The graph in front of you is a collection of all the subs that finished the league this year and their KD against their engagement rate. And here you can see that both Scump and Envoy, they aren't poles apart. They do have a relationship ongoing there, and they both performed quite well. In fact, if anything, you'd argue that Envoy had the stronger year. If we flick over to the search and destroy, Scump is the player who's had a fantastic year in the KD department. This time it's up against first blood percentage, and I think it's fair to say that Envoy did a really good job here. So where Scump was getting a lot of kills, getting a very positive kill death ratio, but not super heavy on the first bloods, Envoy was making up for that in the first blood department and still holding his own. So no real issues there statistically. And finally, Control. This is again just the subs who finished the league. Control is a difficult mode for your SMGs, and as such you've got both players around a 1. Envoy slightly negative, but again both players are within touching distance of each other. They're both engaging the same amounts as each other. There is no huge gap here like Vivid and Apathy on LAG or Dylan Cod and Alex on London, where you can sit there and go, yeah, okay, there's a big hole here. One player is doing 1.5 times the amount of engagements, and there's just going to be a gap somewhere in the playstyle. That's just not happening. And so therefore then, does it come down to the eye test? Does it come down to what we all see, which is that Scump is a very traditional SMG in the sense he gets involved, gets in the mixer, applies the pressure, pushes the spawns out, and does a lot of the good work across the map, as well as getting involved in the slaying department. But does he have that duo alongside him at all times to trade him out? They might be engaging the same amount, but here I think the statistics might be lying a little bit to us, and what's happening is that Envoy is kind of off by himself. We've covered it this year. At some points, he is just engaging things by himself, so his engagement rates are up, but he's just not really alongside Scump. And you could sit there and say that's Scump's fault, right? Scump should be with Envoy, Envoy's the early rotator, and so on and so forth. But you're not going to drop Scump, are you? Let's face it, whilst the king still wants to play, whilst the king still has the hunger to compete, he will be the man for OpTic. I think a final thing here that meant that Envoy was dropped rather than just being seen as, oh, okay, it has to be better next year, was that the back end of the year was certainly lackluster from him. I think Scump really came into his own towards the back end of the year. He was really good throughout the year, perhaps went under the radar a bit, and was fantastic towards the back end of the year, especially at Champs. Whereas I think Envoy, I think he just struggled. I think he really lacked consistency, and I think a lot of the big losses that OpTic suffered, as much as I do say that FormaL was the X factor for this side, I think it lies a lot on Envoy as well. And I think that one of the things that you are seeing here when we've brought up those graphs, you're going to notice that a lot of the times both the SMGs are relatively central, right? They're clustered nearer towards the middle. They do have some above average moments, but generally speaking, they're just kind of around the middle. And I think that's part of the problem. OpTic Chicago want to be a team that are winning things. It's fine to have a safe and solid SMG option, but you need then a big explosive player, a headline player to be in there. So what next then? What happens to OpTic Chicago? Well, the rumors are obviously that they are going to have that merger with the Dallas Empire. What's left of that squad? So Shotzzy and ILLeY come in. And I do like the idea of a Shotzzy Scump SMG duo. I think that's very good. I think that you've got that extra bit of pace and aggression in Shotzzy, that extra bit of intelligence, movement like Envoy had, but without being far apart from the squad. So I do like that duo. I think it could be up there top 2, 3 in the entire league. My concern sits with the ARs, and I don't know. If Dashy moves to main, can he be that guy? Can he slow it right down? Be the player that is very fundamentally solid and sound? I know not all rosters do this, but it's very difficult to not be that guy and be a very good main AR. And I know that Dashy likes to put up some serious figures, so I don't know. I struggle there. And then ILLeY lacked consistency throughout the year. I'm impressed or surprised that Empire kept him. So yeah, I don't know about this roster. To me, there's a couple of gaps there, a couple of questions for me. So what would I do instead? Well, I'd message Toronto, bring in Cammy, tell him to come on over. If I'm moving Dashy to the main AR anyway, Cammy for me is the most complete flex in the league. Absolutely insane player, ridiculous on the second AR, can also play SMG. Very, very good talent. And then the SMG that I would put alongside Scump, I want someone aggressive. I want a headline player, someone young and fresh and willing to go at everything. I'm looking at Standy or Hydra, and again, both might be within contracted options and so on and so forth, but I really do think that you're going to struggle to find good players that are capable of challenging at the very, very top without going and asking these questions to these orgs. How much would it be? Anyway, that's my opinion. Let me know what you think. Do you think that I'm right here and the Envoy Scump situation was resolved correctly, or would you have kept Envoy? Would you have kept FormaL maybe? And who is it that you would put into the lineup next year? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.